Steps into it. Pass is caught. Diggs! Sideline!
Touchdown! Unbelievable! Vikings win it!
Strap yourself in and get ready.
And here we go!
The leaders in fantasy football are incoming, giving you the ultimate insight to help you win your leagues and dominate your mates. You're now listening to the Insight NFL Show with your hosts, Guns and Maverick.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go!
Let's go! Go!
Alrighty, welcome to another episode of the Insight NFL podcast. I am your host, Nathan from SuperCoach Guns, and with me today is Matt, aka NFL Maverick. Matt, how are you?
Yeah, good, mate. Talking about some tight ends. Always going to be an interesting conversation about tight ends. I know people get off them pretty quickly, but I think they've got some value in the league.
Yeah, that's right. Now, I suppose we should get stuck straight into it. I believe you had something to say beforehand regarding tight ends, though.
Yeah, so just wanted to have a starting piece here. Now, I understand why people get off tight ends. Now, they've got like low scoring and high injury risk and inconsistency. And, you know, it's often hard to get right when you draft a tight end in your drafts. But I still do believe there is some value in them. I mean, in saying that, Sam Laporta was the number one tight end last year, and he finished number 47 in the league for overall points for. So, and that was in between David Montgomery at 46 and Michael Pittman at 48. So we're talking about the very, very best at the position, and he ends up as a 47th best overall player. It's pretty rough, but I do think that when we talk about tight ends, it is better to draft one earlier, as in sort of round 3, round 4, than take one later in the draft and just punt on the fact that they go okay in week-to-week scenarios.
Yeah, you do want to secure the best of the best early, and that almost bolsters their value, right? Because of the inconsistency that you get at tight end. Well, let's start out with the tight end one last year. He dethroned the longtime king, Travis Kelce. It's Sam Laporta. Now, rookie last year, second round pick. He came in and he killed it. He had 120 targets on 86 receptions for 889 receiving yards and 10 receiving touchdowns. Seriously, it's quite the season. I think the touchdowns did bolster him to tight end one. I'm not sure if he runs it back though.
Yeah, I suppose I would probably back him in to run it back. I think he's an integral part of that offense still. I think it's a high-powered offense that loves to move the ball. And, you know, he still had a target share percentage of about 21%. I'm rounding it up, which was number 3 in terms of all tight ends in the league. He was 4th in red zone targets out of all tight ends in the league. So, and in the air yards, he was 4th in his position in air yards. So, overall, across the board, he's right up there, heavily involved in the offense. And I still believe that moving forward, he should still be involved enough to maybe even carve out a back-to-back tight end one season.
It's a big call. It's a big call, particularly when, you know, Travis Kelce missed a couple of games in there. But yeah, look, I'm not going to say that he's not my favorite to get tight end one this year. But yeah, I'm not really sure how to feel about sorry, let me get my words out. I'm not really sure how to feel about Sam Laporta this year. I think he's in the top 3 for me for sure. I think it'll be one of Sam Laporta, Travis Kelsey, and Trey McBride that finishes tight end one for me personally. There's a couple of guys there that we'll come to shortly that can push for a tight end one finish if they have uh, a, a better than expected season. But yeah, for me, Sam Laporta, he did it last year. Other than the fact that Jameson Williams is actually here for a full season, I'm not sure if we're going to see much change to that offense. So, and that's good for Sam
Mm.
Laporta, obviously. Let's talk about the king.
Yeah, so
Okay.
obviously, well, he's obviously got more competition, Laporta. I'm actually going to base this one going into Travis Kelsey being the number 2, in my opinion, possibly number 1. But yeah, no, if we're talking about competition at the Detroit Lions with Jamison Williams and everything like that, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, which is a very, very fair statement to say. You can say exactly the same thing about Travis Kelsey. I think Travis Kelsey's, or they've got a lot more wide receivers there now that they can use. It's not just Travis Kelsey who got doubled for majority of the year last year, and then Rashee Rice pretty much for last half of the year. But the good thing is, I don't think Travis Kelsey will get doubled as much next year. There's every chance he does finish the number 1. It's probably between Laporta and Kelsey for me, and then there's a bit of a gap. Either way, you can't go wrong. The only thing I'd say about Kelsey compared to Laporta is age. Now, Kelsey's 34 now. So if Father Time does catch up to the old fella, Laporta's only going to get better and better. So Laporta going into his second year compared to Kelsey in his, 12th year, I'd take the young gun.
Yeah, interesting. I take Kelsey personally. Like you've just got this. The I understand you've got this aging factor for Kelsey at tight end, but you know he hasn't faded really in the last 4 years. Like you look at his let's where is it? Yards per target for Travis Kelsey in the last 4 years. Oh, yeah, like yards per catch rather in the last 4 years. Like there was a little bit of a drop off last year. Actually, I'll give you that, but 2020, 13.5, 12.2, 12.2 in 2021 and 2022. And then obviously last year he was double teamed. You could attribute that to a slightly lower yards per catch. But, you know, I don't think you're really going to lose out no matter who you draft out of Laporta or Kelsey.
Yeah, definitely the personnel last year was a big, big reason why Kelsey couldn't really eat. Now, he did have a target share of 20%, which was 5th in his position, but he did have 19 red zone targets last year, which was 2nd in his position. So I do believe the red zone factor for Kelsey will still be there. Mahomes loves targeting Kelsey in the end zone, and we know how often that happens, and the result of that as well. So, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at their ADP. I'm going to compare Laporta and Kelsey against 21 for Laporta and 26 for Kelsey. So it's very, very similar. I think it just depends on who you prefer, really.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And look, if you're not keen on drafting a tight end in the opening 2 rounds in your fantasy draft, personally, my favorite, not just because of the quality of the player, but also because of the his ADP and the lack of supporting personnel around him. There's multiple reasons, but Trey McBride's one I really like. Um, obviously, you know he's got Marvin Harrison Jr., but he's a direct substitute for Marquise Brown. Last year, he had a 19.6% target share, which I'm not sure where that ranks, but where does that rank Trey McBride's target share?
That ranks 6th in the position of all tight ends.
Yeah. See, that's pretty good. Obviously, he had some questionable quarterback play in the early parts of the season. Um, but if you have a look at from when Kyler Murray returned, in week 10 against Atlanta. He had 21.1 fantasy points, then 9.3, 13, 22, 20, 9.1, 10.8, and 12.4. During that time, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 finishes, 6, 7 finishes inside the top 12 tight ends. Obviously, Marvin Harrison's going to lead the team in targets. I think that's a given, considering it's Marvin Harrison, right? Like, he's a rookie and all that, but he's a stud. Um, you just factor into the account that Zach Ertz is out the building. He took 43 targets off Trey McBride. Early on, there wasn't really, and he took some time off field from Trey McBride as well early on. For me personally, I think Trey McBride, he's in the top 5. I quite like picking him at number 3. I think he's gonna be the best of the rest, if you will. I think Laporta and Kelsey are in a league of their own in ADP, but I think if Trey McBride has a big year, if Trey McBride exceeds expectations, he can push for the overall tight end 1 crown.
Yeah, so Trey McBride's probably their number 2 receiving option on the Arizona offense this year, I'd imagine, behind Marvin Harrison Jr. The one thing I would say about McBride, what I want to see improve, is his red zone targets. He actually had 11 red zone targets last year which we ranked 10th in his position. So I want to see this guy more involved in the red zone. He's a big, tough tight end. And as you said, his QB play at the start of the year was completely different to the second half of the year. So it's a massive upgrade when he gets Kyler Murray back, and he will. So his ADP currently is going at about 45, 43, 45. So that's a bit of a gap between the top 2 and McBride, which is probably about fair. But yeah, as a round 4, round 5 option on McBride, it's not too bad, depending on how many teams you have in your league.
That's right. And another thing to mention is obviously we know that I mentioned before that what's his name, Sam Laporta. He had 10 receiving touchdowns. Travis Kelsey had well, I'm just seeing how many Travis Kelsey had, but let me see. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Here it is. Only the 3. That's not right. No. Only the 5 touchdowns in the regular season for Travis Kelsey last year. Well, Trey McBride had just the 3 receiving touchdowns. I think that number can go up well and truly, particularly if we get a full season of Kyler Murray.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if he will challenge for tight end 1, but I think the next player I'm about to mention here, I'm not sure if he will definitely challenge for tight end 1, but if he somehow comes out of this preseason being their leading receiver, I think Dalton Kincaid can push Sam Laporta and Travis Kelsey all the way. If we have a look at his stats last year, Dalton Kincaid, 91 targets for 73 receptions, 673 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Dawson Knox saw considerably less game time last year. Only the 36 targets for Dawson Knox, and I think that number will continue to drop. I think it's well and truly Dalton Kincaid's position now, and I can see him just being Kelsey 2.0, if you will.
So yeah, I mean, I'm going to base this off because since they were both rookies last year with Laporta and Kincaid, I want to make sure everyone's aware that Laporta's season last year was a massive outlier. He broke all rookie records at his position. So Kincaid was also a rookie, and let's be honest, it just wasn't on the same category as Laporta. But this year, I do think he's going to be a lot more. He's going to be a lot more improved. He's learned a bit more now. He's going to be forced to be more involved in the passing game due to personnel. So there is probably a reason why his ADP is going at 49 at the moment. Good value. I probably wouldn't reach to get him personally. I think that's probably his absolute best, 49. But No, he will definitely improve. He's probably going to be a top 5 tight end, in my opinion, at the end of the year. And yeah, hopefully he can score some touchdowns in the red zone because that Buffalo offense will definitely need it.
That's right. And yeah, I do think he can emerge. There's plenty of reason to suggest that he becomes their leading receiver potentially. Um, there's in terms of vacated targets, we're talking, 240 targets have left the building in Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. We know that obviously Curtis Samuel's going to come in here. We know that we're going to have Khalil Shakir get more targets, Keon Coleman, but to say that uh, Dalton Kincaid stays at 91 targets, it feels unders to me. I think we're looking at someone who can reach
That's fair. Yeah.
110, 120 targets. He's just that sort of tight end, right? Well,
Yeah.
a guy whose genuine ceiling is to be an elite tight end in this league, and with some high level quarterback play, might actually go and do it. Kyle Pitts. Now, I didn't say his name earlier in terms of, I didn't say his name before Dalton Kincaid, just because, you know, Kyle Pitts has still got to deal with an actual alpha wide receiver in Drake London. But I feel like it's almost now or never for Kyle Pitts.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's about time we see him improve. I know he had some bad QE play in the past, but he's really been a non-factor on offense. In all your leagues, you've probably seen him on waivers at some point. That's, again, probably more than fair. But this guy has got the potential to be the best tight end. He came out of college, drafted at pick 8, I think it was, or pick 6, 8, something around there. It was a top 10 pick. And he was, pristine to be the next best tight end coming out of college. So, I definitely want to see more of Kyle Pitts. I don't know if Kirk Cousins will start week 1. He won't be too far away if he's not. And yeah, Kyle Pitts has to be a focal point in this offense moving forward.
Oh, yeah. So if we're having a look at, what's left to the building for the Atlanta Falcons, there's no more Jonnu Smith, who had 70 targets last year, which is criminal when you have Kyle Pitts in the
Disgusting.
building. It's disgusting. That also means
Disgusting.
that tight ends were targeted a heck of a lot in this offense, right? It adds up to 160 targets for tight ends, which is at least. There's still Mike Cole Pruitt. Anyway, point being, it's around 170 targets all up, right? You've also got Mac Hollins and Van Jefferson, who each had around 30 targets that's left the building as well. It adds up. There's a lot of room for Drake London and Kyle Pitts to grow as receiving as receivers. Obviously, like, I don't think Bajan can get much more in terms of targets. Like, he had 86 targets last year. I think it's just the quality of those targets is going to improve. But for Kyle Pitts, 53 receptions on 90 targets isn't good enough. He should be getting the ball. He should be throwing the ball 110 times, and he should be coming down with it between 80 and 90 times a season. And I think that'll translate
Yeah.
into an
Yeah,
1,000-yard
sure.
season if that happens.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I'm just looking at your sheet here, and you've put in. You haven't put in Mark Andrews into the consideration to be a top tight end, and I think that's a bit harsh. Now, yeah, he's a little bit older now. I think he's 30. Where was he? 30.
He's 28.
No, 28. Shit, he's actually younger than what I thought he was. Yeah, cool. And I just don't say why he can't be another top tight end. He played 10 games last year. He had obviously a massive injury and played the playoffs. He came back in the playoffs, I believe. Outside of that, he's been pretty much a top 5 tight end throughout his whole career, even having a tight end 1 year in there as well in 2021. So, yeah, no, that's a bit harsh, I reckon, Guns. I think Mark Andrews is a safe safe option. He's going to be top 5 for sure. You can mark my words.
Do you reckon he actually can finish as tight end 1? Like, if you look at his last 2 seasons, he missed 2 games in 2022. Obviously, in 2021, he finished as the overall number 1. But you look at last year, he missed a fair few games. He's also got Isaiah Likely in the building, who, he's entering his 3rd season. He's a pretty good player himself. I'm just starting to think that, and you've also got the emergence of Zay Flowers last year. And Rashad Bateman needs to do something at this level now. I'm starting to think that Mark Andrews can't quite reach the overall tight end 1 crown, but he's still a very safe and very reliable tight end, and he could well and truly finish in the top 5. I just don't have him have been capable of the overall tight end 1 crown.
Look, for me, he's definitely a contender. And based off health, let's be honest, the whole tight end position is tough on health as it is. I mean, anyone can get injured at any stage. They're all usually 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", and 250 pounds. So there's always a lot of weight and a lot of height there to go around. So if your ankle gets caught under someone, it's always going to hurt. You're always going to come down a bit harder. It's one of those positions, I guess, where injury risk is always quite high. But yeah, no, I definitely think you're being a bit harsh with Mark Andrews. I think he's been a consistent enough performer in this league to at least give him the respect that he can have a season of a tight end 1. I understand you mentioning some personnel, but I'm not convinced on Rashad Bateman yet. And Isaiah Likely is probably going to be doing either seeing less of the field or more blocking, because I think Mark Andrews is a golden receiver for that team.
Well, time will tell on that front, I suppose. Let's look at Cleveland. David Njoku. I think he showed that he can be a truly fantasy relevant tight end last year. He put up some good scores at times. I'll remind you of his stats last year. So he had 123 targets on 81 receptions for 882 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. Now, for starters, 123 targets is really good areas for a tight end. Like, that's the sort of volume you need to finish tight end 1. However, the amount of receiving yards that he converted that into was probably a bit lower than what he would have liked. 10.9 solid, but it's not screaming to me, top tier tight end 1 finish. It's also the last 2 years of his career, he hasn't quite reached that height. So he started out earlier in his career with like 12.1, 11.4. Then he had a down year. He didn't play much at all. Then he went back up to 11.2, 13.2. And then the last few years, he's been hovering at 10.8, 10.9. Now, I think David Njoku needs to just simply boost the amount of receiving yards per target, receiving yards, per catch, I suppose. But I think he could well and truly do it. I think best case scenario, he finishes in the top 5 tight ends. I don't think he can finish tight end 1, just with the style of offense that they run with the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, and I understand that tight ends take a bit longer to develop in the league. But in saying that, he has been in the league for 7 years. That was his 7th year last year, and he finished as the tight end 6. His second best finish was 2018 as a tight end 9, and after that was a tight end 13. So the question has to beg, was that an outlier year finishing as the tight end 6, or is that going to continue? I'd love to see that continue next year. I mean, the second half of the year he had last year in Njoku, if he converted that to a whole year, he'd probably be tight end 1. So let's see if he can just that red hot form that he finished the year on. Let's see if he can bring it into this year and start the year off with a bang.
Yeah, fair enough. But I'm just looking at the numbers here. 17.7. This is from, I'm gonna say, like week 8 onwards. All right. 17.7, 12.6, 11.8, or 12.6 again, 11.9. A down week, 3.7, 27.1, 26.4, 16.4, and 17.4. He finished as a top 10 tight end in all but 2 of those games I just read out there. So he definitely is a consistent enough tight end to finish in the top 5. Um, yeah, I mean, look, I quite like him. I'd happily draft him at his ADP, which is 86.3, particularly when the disparity, the
Mm.
people he's being drafted around is George Kittle, Evan Engram, and Brock Bowers, who have a lot of competition on their team or other mitigating factors.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think Njoku, his ADP of 86 is a bit of a bargain, to be honest. I would absolutely look to target him around there. I know people don't reach on tight ends, but if you're going to reach on someone, that's probably the guy you'd probably reach on.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I just spoke about George Kittle, but we'll look into him a bit further. ADP 61.6. Last year, he played, let me see how many games he played. He played 16 games. He had 90 targets on 65 receptions for 1,020 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. Now, statistically, that's he's one of the few tight ends that's gone over 1,000 yards so far that we've read out. But he put together quite a handy season last year, I must say, just on numbers alone. Like he had the second most targets, second most yards. Clearly an integral part of their offense still. I'm okay with going George Kittle again, but the only problem with him is that there is always going to be a bit more of an injury risk around him than most tight ends.
Mm. Yeah, spot on. And if we're talking about Kittle being more involved in the red zone, I'd love to see that too. He ranked number 9th last year in his position for red zone targets. So I think he's a very good weapon in the red zone. They just need to utilize more of. Um, and if he gets more touchdowns next year, it's just going to boost up his score, I suppose. So, and yeah, he was 8th in his position in target share as well at 18%. So if we can just boost those numbers up just a little bit, I think we'll be seeing potentially a top 5 tight end.
Yeah, I think that is definitely his ceiling. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty keen on George Kittle this year. I mean, at the value, I'm still taking Njoku over him, but if I've got pick 60, you
Yeah,
know, I'm still taking George Kittle, I think.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Um, let's have a look at Jacksonville. Evan Engram. He finished as the tight end 2 last year. And the numbers he put up to do that, well, they were enormous. 114 receptions on 143 targets for 963 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. He led his team in targets. Now, if you're going to have 114 receptions as a tight end, you're always going to finish really well. And that was the nature of the beast. Now, that number is a little bit inflated because they lost Christian Kirk, who was their sure-handed slot wide receiver. But in saying that, right, he still would have been pushing close to 100 receptions regardless if Kirk was there, right? I just think that, you know, if you're wanting someone who genuinely has a high floor, it is Evan Ingram. His ceiling's probably not there, and that was reflected in his yards per catch with 8.4. That's pretty low, but at an ADP of 71, and for someone last year who he had, okay, he actually had a couple of low games. You know, he had a how many? One, two, three, four, five, six, 7 games under 10 points, but He also had 1, 2, 3 games over 20 points, which is a lot for tight ends, I must say.
Yeah. So looks like majority of Ingram's work last year was between the 20s. He had 4 touchdowns on the year, which is pretty yuck, if I'm being honest with you. And 2 of those touchdowns were in one game, which is week 14 against the Cleveland Browns. Even red zone targets are really low. He had, 9 red zone targets on the year, which actually put him at 16th in his position. So it looks like majority of his work is between the 20s. And I don't know if I like that. Now, they've obviously got a better passing game now with wide receivers there at Jacksonville. So if they're not using him in the red zone, I don't know if if his target share and his volume is going to increase or stay the same. I think he's going to decrease, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, look, it well and truly could, but it just depends on what style of offense they go with. Are they going to have frequent shots downfield? Probably, but if they're looking for easier completions, they'll be looking in. They'll be looking in. What's the right word? To the slot, I suppose. And you've got Christian Kirk, you've got Evan Engram, very sure-handed receivers. I think I still think there's a path to a pushing a top 5 finish. Maybe not. He certainly can't get tight end 1, but he's a very solid and sure-handed receiver, and I think he's a lock for the top 12 this year.
No, top 12 definitely. But yeah, I think like the last 2 years he's finished as number 6 and number 2 in his position, and number 2 I don't think that'll happen again. I think it's between 6 and down for him, and I'm thinking more between 6 and 10 to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. I'll put this. I'll put this to you. Njoku or Engram?
I think I'd go with Njoku.
Yeah, probably. I probably would too, personally.
Um, I, I think I would because obviously Jacksonville have increased. Have obviously brought in some receivers that will take some targets off Ingram. But you look at the Browns and they've brought in Jerry Judy, who may be okay. Outside Jerry Judy, they haven't really got much. Well, obviously at Mari Cooper, but outside of Mari Cooper, should I say, they have only got Jerry Judy and Elijah Moore. So I think Njoku is number 2.
I Yeah, that's really my point too. I think Njoku's he's ahead of the other bits of the competition outside of Amari Cooper, and they don't really have a receiving running
Mm.
back in their room, so it does set uh, David and Njoku as a number 2 on that team. Um, Here's an interesting one. One that I think, he might be the steal of all the tight ends. TJ Hawkinson. Now, I'm aware he's come off an ACL tear, but to have a guy who is a perennial top 12 tight end finisher being drafted down at 103 feels absurd to me.
Yeah, there's a reason why though. I think is because I don't think he's going to play at the start of the year.
Right. Right.
When did he do his knee
I,
again? I
I
can't remember what week it was, but it was halfway
Week
through at least, wasn't it?
16. Week 16.
All right. So at the back end of the season, he did an ACL. The generally 12 months for big boys like TJ Hawkinson. So look, he might come back for the second half of the year. He might come back a bit earlier. I think that's why. I think that's why. And then again, when he does play, will he have a connection with the new QB? He's had no
Well,
training
look,
camp.
let's have a chat about what Hawkinson did pre ACL last year. There was a lot of top 10 finishes.
Mm.
He only had two, yeah, 3 games below 10 points. One of them was the game he tore his ACL in. Um, you know, he had, if I look at the official stats here, um, TJ Hawkinson had 95 catches on 127 targets for 960 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. If I look at, you know, that, I'm thinking that's an elite level tight end, and it was. He was having a career year
Oh yeah,
there.
yeah,
I'm just looking at fantasy points per
absolutely.
game last year. But in the meantime, you know, if somehow Hawkinson returns week 1, um, it's got to be a fair bit of value in him at 103.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. No, I do agree. And look, if you never did a knee, we'd be talking about Hawkinson as being one of the top tight ends in that conversation for sure. Um, but yeah, no, it's hard to predict what's going to happen with Hawkinson. As I said, off a knee and with a rookie QB, I don't know if he's going to be able to support all the receivers they've got plus Hawkinson. So for me personally, I'd let Hawkinson go to someone else, and I would probably see how he goes this year and then look to draft him for the following year. I don't reckon I have much interest for this year unless I get him off the
Yeah,
waivers.
yeah, fair enough. It's brutal on the poor fella because I'm just looking at points per game. He was tight end 2 with 14.6 points per game,
Yeah,
matching Travis Kelsey, who
yeah,
only had marginally more. I think it's like less than zero point
yeah,
0.1 points per game more. Like we're talking,
yeah. Now, there's nothing wrong with Hawkinson's ability. The ability is there. It's just there's a lot of unknown this year for him, unfortunately.
yeah. I'd like to get more of an update on him, but yeah. Um, well, the final one I've got in here for the guys that can finish top 12. Obviously, I didn't know that Hawkinson was going to miss most of the year, but Brock Bowers. Now he he's been hyped up as a big talent coming out of Georgia. Um, a lot of people spoke about him being a proper generational tight end, including us. And then, of course, the team that really didn't need a tight end goes ahead and drafts him anyway. The Las Vegas Raiders, killing Michael Mayer, who looked to be a relatively promising prospect at the tight end position. Um, and then also killing, well, not killing Brock Bowers, but putting a cap on Brock Bowers, you know. Um, for me personally, at the ADP, I'm probably staying away, particularly when there's guys like Njoku, Jake Ferguson, Dallas Goddard who are behind him. Um, but I'm not going to knock the selection of Brock Bowers but on talent alone.
Yeah, talent definitely there with Brock Bowers. I hate the landing spot so much. Seriously, if he went somewhere half decent, maybe he could have been fantasy relevant. Um, Again, I'm letting him go to someone else. If someone wants to draft him, take your risk for him because I'm not doing it. The only upside I can say about Brock Bowers is if he does get Gardner Minshew as his QB, that is a much better option than O'Connell. I think Gardner Minshew last year showed that he could support at least a couple of players in Indiana. So that's a positive for Brock Bowers. Um, but then again, he may come out and just go, "Oh well, fuck is I'm just going to dominate this game, and no one's going to be able to guard me." So I hope that's the case, but doubtful.
Yeah. Um. Oh, before I go into my dribble about Brock Bowers, I've got an update here on Hawkinson. The expectation is that he probably starts the season on the physically unable to perform list and comes back week 6, week 7, sort of thing. Um, if he gets up and
Yeah.
running, like
So
he's not a,
you're talking mid season at best.
you're talking mid-season now. If he comes back early-ish, you know, and finds his feet, by the time he's up and running, we're talking fantasy playoffs. He can still be a important part of your roster,
Mhm.
and at that ADP, he
Yeah.
might be worth a flyer. Back to
Yeah.
yeah,
Look, I think ADP's irrelevant for him though at that point. Like if he's gonna be out for the first 6 weeks, you don't draft him. Um, but I mean, week 10, you got some fab to spend. He comes back. Do you stash him on your bench? It's worth a couple of dollars.
Yeah, there's a few. I suppose you just play what's in front of you in terms of what you're going to do with Hawkinson. But I think the important thing is to keep in the back of your mind when you're looking for tight ends because the ceiling is, a top five tight end at full fitness. Back to Brock Bowers though. Uh, I feel as though by drafting two tight ends in the early rounds in back-to-back years, they must have a plan for both of them. Like you're not writing off Michael Mayer after 1 year. Like they've got to have something up their sleeve, and I think there's going to be a fair bit of play action this year. Um, I imagine that I think the quarterback that best suits play action is Gardner Minshew. Um, and if they roll with Gardner
Mm.
Minshew and they put him alongside, and they've got Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer, you can still get some good production out of both of them. Um, Obviously, Bowers is the number one guy there. Do you think he can finish in the top 12 tight ends?
Mm, yeah, I think he can. Um, he's going to need a lot to go his way. He's going to need Gardner Minshew to be that starting QB, as I said before. With Aiden O'Connell, I don't think that would be possible. Um, but talent alone, you probably have to give Brock Bowers the respect he deserves. And the talent alone, he could absolutely finish top 12. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, who else have I got here? Now, there's a couple of guys who are borderline top 12. We'll go in depth on a couple of them. Just the first two here. We'll look at Dallas Goddard. Um, when we talk about the Philadelphia offense, we think Jalen Hurts, we think AJ Brown, and we think uh, Devonta Smith, rather. Dallas Goddard, he had a quiet year last year. 83 targets, 59 receptions, 592 receiving yards, and only 3 touchdowns. He's going to need some more targets if he's going to be a actual tight end one finish. That stat sheet's not enough. Now, he did only play 14 games. That's his saving grace there. But he needs to do more than what he dished up last year to finish in the top 12.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And honestly, based off his fantasy career, he needs to play a full season. He hasn't played a full season at all in his career. So, um, his best season, he's finished as a tight end 10. That's his best ever fantasy season in his position. So it's probably unrealistic to say that he's going to be finishing in the top 10 this year based off what he's done in the past. So is he borderline top 12? I think he's the definition of it. Now, he's probably a good option for week to week matchups. But I'd love to see him get more touchdowns as well. I mean, 3 on the year, back to back years in 2022 and 23 just isn't enough for a guy who's 6'5" and quite physically imposing as well. So, yeah, I just play a full season, stay healthy, and just get some red zone targets, would you?
Yeah, pretty much. If I see Dallas Goddard there at pick 103, I'm really looking more towards a Pat Frymouth or Luke Musgrave later on in the draft. Um, but someone who I think will go under the radar this season for fantasy football is your tight end, Jake Ferguson. Now, last year he had 71 receptions on 102 targets for 761 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. He was second in the team on receptions, targets, yards. Um, he lacked a few touchdowns in comparison to Brandon Cooks, who had 8. but he was clearly the lead supporting role to CD Lamb, and you know teams are going to be a much more uh, alert onto CD Lamb. I don't know if, well, yeah, he'll still put up ridiculous numbers, but people are going to know about him and they're going to mark him pretty heavily. He'll be double teamed at times. Um, I reckon Jake Ferguson can improve on those numbers again this year.
Yep, absolutely. Last year, he finished as a tight end 8 on the year. It was his second year in the league. Was his second year in the league? I think it was his
I
second
think
year
so,
in the league.
yeah.
It was. Um, yeah, so absolutely he can. He's an agile big man. Like he's 6'5", but he can absolutely leap over blokes. There was a highlight last year he did it, and then ran off for 10 more yards after that. So um, the one thing I really like about Jake Ferguson, I know you said touchdowns, he only had 5 on the year, but this is the part that I really like. Dak loves him in the red zone. Absolutely loves him. We'll look at him first every single time. He had 23 red zone targets last year, which ranked first in the position. So I don't think that'll change much at all. Dak, that's his first option on offense to look at that. Dak is look at Ferguson in the red zone, and yeah, I think we'll see more touchdowns out of Fergie this year for sure.
Yeah, I like it. I think if, for me personally, I almost lean towards taking Jake Ferguson over an Evan Ingram. Like, I know I put him in the borderline top 12, but I didn't realize just how good he was until I looked at these stats. I'm quite a fan, I reckon. Um, I'm
And he's young. He's only going to get
yeah,
better,
that's
in my
right.
opinion.
Yeah. Now there's a couple of other names on here. Dalton Schultz. I'm not sure how he goes with, three really stud wide receivers there, but if any of them were to miss time, you'd think that Dalton Schultz gets a few more targets, probably creeps his way into that top 15, maybe even pushes the top 12 a little bit. Um, Cole Komet, like
He's a
s-
streamer.
streamer, same deal. Sort of looking at fourth, maybe even fifth in line for targets. You can let him go. Luke Musgrave, I think we could probably talk a little bit more about him. Um, has he won the starting tight end job at Green Bay? I know Tucker Kraft took over and did a solid job, but I think it's Musgrave's position, don't you?
No, it is. Yeah, 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 absolutely, it is. Yep. I think he showed some promise, huh?
Yeah, he was not bad
I
last
mean,
year.
he's not really. I don't think he's going to be much of a. I wouldn't draft him. I think his ADP's very low. Should I say? Yeah, 126. So 134 is actually his ADP. So look, I wouldn't draft Musgrave, but I'd put a star next to his name, and stash him in my starred section to see how he goes in the first couple of weeks, because yeah, he could be a point of difference down the line for you if he comes up. Um, and yeah, I think this offense will get better with Jordan Love, and he could be a sole reason for it.
Yeah, and like there's a lot of young guys on this offense, but it was his rookie season last year, and we talk about it at the top of the show. Tight ends take a while to get into it, and Sam Laporta was an outlier. You got to be patient with Luke Musgrave. He could come along this year, though. In saying that, and if he does, there's some great value there. Um, Pat Frymouth, I thought I'd mentioned him briefly. I I think he could. I don't know if he's their second receiver, but I think he'll be close to it. Like, is Roman Wilson really going to get more targets this year than Pat Freiermuth? He might do, but I think the competition between those two will be pretty close. He did have an injury-riddled season last year, Freiermuth, but the season beforehand in 2022, he really did stand up and show out offensively. He had, I think, the best part of 9 top 10 finishes in 2022. Now, he had only 2 last year in 2023, but I think that he will improve on that, and you know, I think he's second in line in terms of targets.
I'm completely off Pat Frymouth for one reason and one reason only. Arthur Smith is there in the
Oh yeah,
building. This guy sucks. I hate Arthur Smith. He made Kyle Pitts look like a little girl. No, thank you, and Pat Frymouth, just for that reason.
what you're telling me is Darnell Washington's going to get 100 targets this year.
No, they're not going to do anything. Neither of them. Not one of
Yeah,
them.
true. I did see Michael Pruitt's on the roster. Never mind.
Yeah.
Well, that just about does it for the tight end section, I think. Yeah. Any other
Yep.
names you want to
Yep.
throw in there?
Yep. Not really. Probably the only one that I'd consider is Cade Otton as a young tight end. I think he may take that next option, that next step on the offensive end. I mean, 25 years old and finishes a tight end 19, so he's probably just one to monitor. You know, tight ends do get better as they get older, so he could. But other than that, I think that's probably as far as I'd go.
Yeah. Well, look, I don't think I'm around for a little while, so it's all you, I suppose, for the next month or so, Matt. But nah,
Yeah.
I enjoy doing the run sheets.
Nah, have a good one, mate.
Oh yeah, I will. Over in the US, I'll see if I'll see what the word on the street is when it comes to a few of these uh fantasy football situations are. I think I'm in, where am I going? Los Angeles, and stop by in Seattle as well. So I'll get some news on how many
You
times
might
per
see
game they're gonna use Gus Edwards.
bloody DK Metcalf walking the streets. And I tell you
Oh
what, you
gee.
wouldn't want to see him in a dark alley.
No, no, no. I'll probably go the other direction. I'll be too scared, to be honest. Um
Oh yeah, I wouldn't even go anywhere near him. He'd throw you against the wall.
yeah. Anyway, well look, that's it for the positional analysis. Look, there's some we've got some stuff in stall. Or I should say, Matt's got some stuff in stall. I'm back in August. Yeah, it'll be fine. You can hold down the ship whilst I'm gone.
Yeah, we'll probably do a couple of mock drafts along the way to try and get a feel of what's happening around the league.
Perfect. Well,
And even by then, we'll have more details on where we're at with training camps and OTAs and stuff like that. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for listening. And if you're following us on social media, you could also find that we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. And then, yeah, if you're on your podcast platform of choice, make sure to drop us a 5-star review and just download for us. Yeah, thanks for watching/listening, and we'll catch you next time.